Welcome back to the show. I'm DG Hamblin. With me is my good friend Ron Faust. And today we're going to talk about a sensitive subject. We're going to talk about suicide and have an honest conversation, Ron and I, about this subject. And our hope is that somebody gets some benefit from our conversation. Ron has had some specific experiences that I think he would like to share with us. And so for now, I'm going to let you just start telling your story, if that's okay, and then we'll ask questions as we go along.
That's fine. However you want to do it. It's good with me.
Okay.
I got a question for you first.
Sure.
Have you ever been suicidal?
Yes.
Do you know what drove it?
I do. I think I do.
First off, let me tell you what I'm looking for.
Okay.
In my opinion, from what I've found, suicide is typically driven by depression or fear, sometimes together. But it can also be driven by exhaustion.
Right.
All right. It can be exhaustion on an emotional, physical, whatever level. So there's a lot of things that drive it. I have had numerous, let's call it close calls. I won't say attempts because I never actually did anything. But I've had a gun to myself twice and have considered a high-speed automobile accident once and was in fact actually in the process of doing it. And I have considered a drug overdose once to put myself to sleep.
Yeah.
In those times, one of them was born of anger. The first one when I was young. I was just angry at the world. I didn't know why I was angry. I just had all this anger, nothing to do with it. And I was going to shoot myself with my hunting rifle, and I was going to shoot myself in the gut so I could suffer for a while.
Okay.
All right. And that's, I tell you this because this is the thought process that I had. The second one was, and I've been there twice since I became a true Christian. But the second one is when I think God stopped me. I was going to run into a bridge, and that was driven by an overwhelming feeling that the world was trying to crush me.
Okay.
All right. So that's all I can tell you is there was so much that I felt was physically and emotionally attacking me that I just said, I'm not doing this anymore. And the last one, I'm not going to go into the third one. It's just, I think that was just aggravation too, but I'm not sure what. The last one was actually just a few years ago in a parking lot where I worked. And it was basically motivated by the fear that I have had up until recently, which is that I didn't have a future. There was nothing else left for me to do, and that I was going to continue to have life crap on me for the remainder of my years. And I decided that day that I didn't want it anymore.
Right.
So it was always driven by some kind of external criteria, except for, let's say the third one, I guess, was internal because it was more depression.
Okay.
All right. And I beat depression. And when I say I beat depression, what I mean is, do I get depressed? Yeah. Do I let it guide me on my decisions? No. I don't give depression any power. Okay. I understand it's a chemical reaction inside my body, and I leave it at that. It's okay. Do your thing and let's move on. So I don't let it mold my decisions as far as what I'm going to do.
That's really interesting. I just want to just touch on that for a second because that I don't know that everybody could take that that understanding of that it is just a chemical thing. Is that something you already knew, or is that something you learned? How did you decide that okay, it's a chemical, or are you aware of any thought process there?
Did I learn it? My mother spent most of her life trying to convince us that we were doomed because of her problems. Not on purpose. She thought she was preparing us so that when these things happened to us, they wouldn't do to what they did to her. She was a diagnosed bipolar.
Okay.
Bipolar is chemical reactions in the mind and the brain that we don't have a physical ability to change.
Right.
All right. We have an ability to deal with it or process it, but we don't have any way to stop it.
Right.
So I decided at that time when I saw what it was doing to my mother, I said, well, Mom, I'm not going to let that do that to me.
Okay.
I'm not going to let it do it to me. So did I learn? Yes, I learned because of my mother's harping on me about these chemical things that you can't do anything about,
Right.
which is correct. You can't do anything about them. But
Right.
just like in the world, you can't do anything about what happens to you. You can only do what you can want to do based on your response. You can only choose your response. You can't choose the input, but you can definitely choose the output. I can't stop
Right.
you from bothering me, but I can stop me from taking it out on you because you're bothering me.
That
So it's the
makes
same
sense.
thing with depression. Depression is something that I don't have any control over. How I respond, that's totally different.
That's such a wise way to look at it, I think, and something that many people don't understand and don't realize. Maybe you had the same experience there. So for me, what I'm thinking back to is not necessarily a depression or suicidal thoughts, although I had those in my own moment. Maybe we can touch on those at some point. Um, but understanding that there is a thing, like, so for example, with my PTSD, the day that I understood that what I had was PTSD, all of a sudden, it was like this burden was gone somewhat. And
You
so then I
identified your enemy.
knew, yeah,
Okay.
okay. So for you, it was kind of the same thing. Maybe you're able to understand what the enemy is. It's just a chemical reaction. Don't let it control me.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So
Okay.
you learned that you were not a victim of the input, the things you had to take in. You were going to be a victim of the output if you didn't change how you handle the input.
Right.
So the victimization of it only comes, and as bad as this sounds to so many people, it is a choice.
Sure.
It is 100% a choice. Anything that comes out of you is a choice.
Right.
Right? And people don't
Right.
want to believe that because they get stuck doing things that they don't know how to combat. They see their output is bad and they
Right.
think, well, there's nothing I can do. And it just keeps driving them further and further and further down because they
Sure.
don't see that they have control of the output.
Right.
But to control the output, you have to learn how to. And people say they try to control it. I don't control my depression. I just accept it. I gave it its own life. I said,
Okay.
okay, depression is another part of me. It's its own life. It does its own thing.
Yeah.
But just like me and you talking, you can ask me a question. I don't have to answer. I don't have to
True.
do anything. I can get up and
Right.
walk out if it's too much trouble.
Right.
So until I defined it as its own entity, I was
Okay.
unable to determine how I was going to combat it. So I turned it, identifying the enemy. I gave it a life so I could consider it an enemy, which I hate to use the word enemy, but depression is never a good thing. Depression doesn't
Right.
happen to try to make you better.
Right. Yeah.
So I identified my enemy and then I pursued how am I going to handle this?
Okay. All right. Okay. So now that we diverted up, let's come back and I don't remember what you were saying, but where were we at?
I have to go back and look at the tape.
Right. Okay.
Honestly,
So
it's easy to get off track on this because there's so many facets to what we're talking about, so many
right.
tangents that you can go off.
Right. So we were
But
talking
the
about,
core was about learning. I think you were talking about how
yes.
did you learn this, or how did you
Right.
discover it?
So and before that we were talking a little bit about your the most recent time, and were you done telling us about that?
No, I mean it'll all come.
Yeah.
It should all come out. I mean, let me go ahead and make something else clear.
Okay.
I'm not like most people. All right.
Right.
I really don't care what anybody thinks about me or what I do.
Right.
All right. All I care about is what I think about what I do. If you don't like the way I am, you are free to leave, and all that. Now,
Sure.
most of the people that I know are very private about their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Privacy, in my opinion, privacy is just withholding potential helpful information from other people.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not private about my life because I'm a human. All right.
Right.
Just like everybody out there watching right now is a human being. I
Sure.
assume. I don't know. There might
Oh,
be
we
an
hope.
AI out there trying to figure
Right.
out how to take us over. But the humans out there are the same as me. And if they've got a problem, and particularly if they determine a solution, why wouldn't you want? Why would you embarrass just to be? Why would you be embarrassed to say I had a gun in my mouth?
Right.
There's nothing embarrassing about that. It's
Sure.
a horrible thing that if you don't share, how do you know you're not going to do it again?
Yeah.
How do you know your friend's not going to do it? He could be sitting there in the same situation, and you're going to say something like, "Well, it could be worse." You know what? It could be worse is it's a death sentence. I don't want to hear it.
Right. Sure. And that doesn't help anybody.
No. So I'm open about it because I don't want to find out my buddy died because he was sitting there with a gun in his mouth, and his buddy said, "Well, you know what could be worse? When you taste gun oil, there is no worse."
Right. It can be worse. Doesn't solve the pain that I'm in right now. It doesn't make the pain better that you're in.
Do you know what that statement comes from? Two
Uh,
things. One, because you don't have any idea how to handle what you're fixing to try to handle.
Yeah.
And two, because you're comparing your life to his life. You're going, well, you know, you got a car, you got money, you got this, you got that. I got nothing. Why are you suicidal and I'm not? Because it has nothing to do with any of that. Suicide is a mental thing. It's inside your head.
Sure. Yeah.
And the criteria, it's the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Okay. The straw that breaks my back, you could probably pick it up and take 10 more. All right. So it's not the straw, it's
right.
the back.
Right.
All right. So don't
Right.
say
We're all different. Right. We're all different. We're wired different. We're made different.
That's why I didn't call anybody. I took care of it myself. I said, if somebody says it could be worse, I'm going to pull the trigger. I already knew it.
Right.
So I did not ask for help.
Okay.
All right. So that's some of the things that have to be broken.
So you didn't ask for help, but how did you get from where you were to be able
to not pull the trigger?
Yeah.
Well, I can't really put into words exactly because there was so much static at the time.
Right. By static, you just mean all the stuff in your head just kind of going.
I mean, most people probably know when you get stressed, all kinds of stuff pops in your head that has nothing to do with what you're dealing with. Nothing to do with it.
Right.
And I had to ask myself if I wanted to make a decision based on what I thought the future was going to be or the potential of the future. And if I couldn't tell myself that there was no potential for me in the future, then I had no reason to do it.
Okay.
All right. So I sat there in that thing and I had the gun in my mouth.
Right.
I said, am I bold enough to say I have nothing to look forward to? And I thought about it and I thought about it and I said, no, I'm not. I don't know. But if I pull this trigger, I'll never know.
Right.
So I stopped.
What do you think took you to that particular point to think that? Because obviously that really those weren't thoughts. Well, to me, I would assume, I shouldn't say it's obvious, but to me, I would assume that you hadn't had those thoughts up to that point, that logical reasoning about the potential.
Obviously, yeah, because I wouldn't have had the gun in my mouth.
Yeah, right. So do you think it was just, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, was it just in the final thoughts of your potential final moments, as you're reviewing everything, how did that process come into your mind? And you may not be aware, it might just have happened.
Well, I think that every human being has an innate and unstoppable desire to live. All right. So that is always in there. So even no matter what you do, it's in there. And that was whispering to me too, because I think, well, you know, as a Christian, I know I don't feel like I'm supposed to do it. And I think it's disrespectful to God to take my own life.
Right.
Man, I'm trying to answer this for you, but there was so much.
Well, it's might not be an easy question to answer, but there may not be an answer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what was the defining moment.
Right.
I don't know what made me think, well, why am I trying to make this decision that I can't see the future?
Sure.
So why am I trying to make a decision based on a future that hasn't occurred?
Right.
And so I don't know what pushed me to that though. I have no idea.
Well, you know, you said earlier that you're not like most people. And I'll guess one of the things I really like about you is that you are not like most people. And I think that most people would not have had the presence to stop and think in that moment. And maybe there's somebody out there who now will take the time and ask themselves that question. Was there, I might be getting the story wrong. You and I have talked about this a little bit before. Was there one of the times, one of these kind of critical incidents for you, Was there a kind of a miraculous ending to one of those?
Talking about when I met God.
Yeah,
Is
let's
that what
talk
we were
about
talking about?
perhaps.
Uh,
Was there a time when the gun didn't go off? Or am I getting your story confused with a story I had with
I don't
somebody
think that's
else?
happened with me. You mean
Okay,
like I pulled the trigger, and it didn't
and it
fire?
didn't work. That didn't happen
No,
with you.
no, it didn't happen with me.
Okay, it was somebody else I talked to then. Okay.
And my guess is their whole concept of life and death changed dramatically in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so when you met God, let's talk
Well,
about
mine
that.
was, and that he maybe have the same story as I do. But the one time that I told you I was gonna have an accident. I was in a company truck, was driving down Simonton Bridge Road, fixing to go over the river over on the east side, and I was going to drive into the bridge abutment. And I was pushing that truck as hard as I could to go as fast as I could. This is a little Toyota, it wasn't fast anyway. I probably could have pushed it faster. But I figured, hey, it's a small truck. I'll kill myself. And I was mad. I was screaming and hollering, and I kept blaming God for all this stuff. And all of a sudden, and I love this story because there's no way to prove it. Which proof is an interesting word too. But
Right.
I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden, I realized I wasn't alone. Now, think of this. Take this however you want. Take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't matter because this is my reality. I don't really care if it works for you. But for me, I literally looked sideways, and Jesus was next to me. Now, when you ask, what did he look like? If you ask me what did he look like, you don't really understand what Jesus is.
Right.
There was no human anything that happened. I couldn't see him with my eyes. But I could see him in my soul. He was there talking to me.
Well, theophany is the way that God presents himself to man.
Yeah.
And so that happens in different forms.
And he didn't come to me in a physical manner, but I knew he was sitting there.
Wow.
And we had a discussion. I don't remember everything, but the one thing that made the biggest difference was he said, you know what? You're screaming and hollering about how you don't believe me. You believe in me. And he said, and then as soon as you're done with that, you blame me for everything. He said, which one is it? Well, what? And he said, you can't, if you don't believe me, if I don't exist, you cannot blame me.
Right.
Oh my God. I said, oh, wow. I said, wow.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, just stuff lifted. And a lot of the anger that I had in me at the time just lifted. And that wasn't all of it. I still had work to do. But the bridge abutment and me making a dramatic connection went off the table right there. In fact, I was already past the bridge and up the hill before I realized I had abandoned the idea.
Yeah.
So that was an epiphany moment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the gentleman that pulled the trigger and the gun didn't go off.
Right.
That would be his epiphany moment, but I believe it's probably the same as mine. Now, he might not have physically seen God or whatever, but I have a feeling he knew he was there.
Right. Yeah.
He knew he was there.
So, okay, so I want to talk about then, because my experience is very similar to the one you just described. So I was in, and I might get a little emotional because I still get emotional talking about this, but yeah, my senior year of high school was not great for me. I had a falling out with friends that I had been friends with for a long time, and since we were all in one group, all of a sudden I was outside. I had no friends, and I was depressed, and probably for the better part of a year. And so I honestly don't remember if it was if I was still in school or if it was shortly after graduation, but I was just so depressed and so hurting and questioning the existence of God, questioning the whole purpose of why we're here, why, what is the use of even living. And so, yeah, I got in my car and I got out on the bypass. There was no loop at the time; it was still just a bypass. But I had a spot picked out, and yep, nice long straightaway and a bridge abutment. I thought the same thing you did. No seatbelt, and I figured, 110 miles an hour probably make it pretty quick. And as I'm riding along, as I'm on the bypass, in that moment, I just said this little prayer, and I said, God, if you're real, I need to know. I didn't see anybody, but in that instant, it was like somebody just poured warm bath water, and this warmth from head all the way down to my toes just bathed me, and this peace and calm that I hadn't felt in a long time just washed over me, and I started to cry, and I slowed down, got off the bypass, turned around, and I went home. And I probably had 2 or 3 moments in my life where I had kind of a spiritual reawakening and a coming back to God, and that was one of those times for me. Maybe the first one where I really had questioned my faith and then came back to it.
Yeah. So we had very like.
Yeah,
You did see him. You just didn't realize you were seeing him with the same sense as I was seeing him with, but he was
right.
there.
I definitely sensed His
Yeah.
presence.
See is
The
an
Holy
interesting
Spirit.
word.
It is, isn't it?
You
Seers
see him with
would,
your heart. You don't really see him.
yeah. Well, seers, like in the Bible, seers would have visions. They would see things in different ways, and in a sense, we all can have that experience.
I think
But
we all do, but in a way, but
yeah,
not on a grand scale like me and you did.
right, yeah,
And I'm thankful for it. And in a roundabout sort of way, I'm thankful that I was pushed to the limit on more than one occasion.
right,
Because each time that it happened, I reproved to myself that I do have control of my own actions.
yeah.
Now, there is one thing I want to interject.
Okay,
We seem to keep, me and you as Christians, we seem to keep heading toward God to intervene. God did this, God did. It's really not about God. All right. Whether we live or die doesn't have much to do with God. For me and you, God showed himself because at that point, I think we both needed to see him. And I say see, I don't think
right,
eyes. In that moment, I think we both needed to know his presence.
yeah,
All right. Not just believe, but know, feel it.
right,
Doesn't work that way for everybody.
true,
And non-Christians have the same kind of power as Christians do. They just don't necessarily get that wash of what we see as God. It could be them doing it to themselves. They could get that wash of warmth because they know there's in another part of their mind that they're okay and they don't have to do this. It can come from anywhere.
yeah,
But all of this has very little to do with Christianity.
okay,
Right?
right,
I like Christianity. I like knowing that God is on my side and there for me.
yeah,
But ultimately, this last one, yeah,
yeah,
I haven't gone in this. Actually, there was more than I was close not long ago.
right,
All right, I had talked to a friend of mine about getting some medication that I could take and put myself to sleep.
mm-hmm.
What was that one motivated by? That one was motivated by I didn't believe that, taking into consideration my mental degradation, which some of it's age related, some of it, unfortunately, a lot more than I thought was stress related.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right,
I was not convinced that I was going to be able to keep a roof over my family's head.
sure,
I also knew that I'm worth considerably more dead than I'm alive as
okay,
far as money, just
right,
money,
right,
okay? Just money. So I thought that I was, and my wife says I was suicidal. I really wasn't. I kept telling my friends, look, I have this thing pushing me. I don't want to go there. So I want you guys to know I'm fighting to try to help me from making a snap, stupid decision.
yeah,
So I was convinced I couldn't take care of them. They needed my life insurance. Life has been hard for a while on me, physically and otherwise.
right,
I lost my job in 21 or 20, whatever it was, that I thought I would be there for the rest of my life.
mm-hmm.
Um, I had to go back to working, hard work,
Yeah,
dealing with family that is struggling, trying to help them when I can barely even help myself. And I had considered ending it for that reason. The problem with that, and I went to a psychologist for a little while a few years back, and he agreed because he said he couldn't. He said I can't help you. And I said, okay, why? And he said because your reasoning is logically sound. He said, but life isn't logical. He said life has very little to do with logic when it comes to dealing with people.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So logically, and it was, I saw myself as a computer program. If you know anything about programming computers, it's if
yeah,
then.
sure,
If this happens, then this. And you have to identify what can happen, what those thens are. So if
right,
you push a one comes up, not a 5.
mm-hmm.
So it's if one, then 1.
Right,
And so for me, if I wanted to keep a roof over their head, I might have to, in my life, to give them the money. So I wasn't really suicidal, but I was pushed into a corner about potential futures. I think probably most of the people out there today that are wrestling with it have a kind of a comparable situation.
Sure. Yeah, comparable with that. Yes. It's, what are the reasons why people commit suicide? You talk about anger, or depression. They're in some kind of pain, and some people make this logical decision that things are better if they're not around. And you look at what's going on in places like Canada, where there seems to be, and I'm not living there, so I don't know for sure, but from what I've seen and what's come out of Canada lately, where suicide is legalized, and in some instances almost seems to be encouraged, especially with some young folks, that if they're going to save the planet, you need to just get rid of yourself. And um, that's
That's almost cult.
yeah,
That's almost cult mentality, mass
right,
hysteria, cult hysteria.
yeah, yep. So okay, I had a follow up question for you, and let me think for just a second. It
I
was
screwed you up. Sorry.
no, you didn't screw me up. I screwed myself up by talking. Um,
We do that a lot. We speak and we mess
right.
ourselves up.
So for you, this was very much a logical thought process,
Yeah. Now,
where you saw you're basically you made a chart, and you were trying to weigh the pros and the cons, and what's the best thing for your family, financially.
but it was pretty much only financially.
Yeah,
Now, I have an advantage, which is also a disadvantage. I haven't been diagnosed, but my psychologist is convinced that I'm high functioning autistic. I don't have much emotion. If I mean,
right,
people in my life that mean a lot to me pass away. I miss them, but it's not like a major issue. I don't cry in the corner. I do have moments where things bother me, and abuse to people, hurting people. That's where
sure,
emotions will come out. But I don't have the safety net of having emotional feelings to stop me. I also don't have the disadvantage of having emotional stuff push me. So everything that I do is like a computer program. It's very mechanical. Everything is pattern, right?
okay, yeah,
And my life experiences I can put into a pattern, and I can decide, well, should there be a pattern here or should there not be a pattern here? And I move stuff around accordingly. So with all of this, it was extremely logical. If they needed money to pay the mortgage so that the house wouldn't go away and I could die and they'd have that money, a logical outcome. Stupid outcome because it doesn't consider any of the things that matter, which is them.
right,
All I'm looking at is the money.
right,
All right. Do I think I would have ended up doing it? I've always felt like I was going to end up doing it. That's never going away. And from a young age, I've always felt I don't belong here. This is not my life, not my world. To
right.
quote one of my favorite writers, there's other worlds than these. And I think
There
I might have
are,
stepped off in the wrong one. But I'm also smart enough to understand that's not my call.
right,
I'm where I'm supposed to be. If I believe in God, I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
right.
So
There are other worlds. We'll go back there one day.
yeah,
Yeah,
there
right.
was. But yeah, I don't. It's some of the stuff that I refer to. People are going to think, well, it's not that easy. It may not be as easy for you because of the emotional part that I am devoid of.
Right.
But then again, it might be harder for me. Some things are harder for me because I don't have the emotion.
Sure.
I can't relate to people the way you do because I don't connect on an emotional level so much. I understand it and I know what they're going through, but I don't feel it.
If somebody's describing to you something that happened to them, something traumatic or something they're experiencing, do you feel their emotion as they're describing it to you, or do you? That's in.
I understand it. My
Yeah.
wife reads to me off Facebook. She said, "Oh my God, this little kid got bit by a rattlesnake, 3 years old, and it killed him." I'm going, "Oh, that sucks." And she's
Yeah.
beside herself. Oh my God, a three. And I'm thinking, well, hey, it happens. It's the
Yeah.
way life is. I'm sorry, but and it's not even anybody I know.
Right.
So is it horrible? Sure.
Yeah.
Do I feel bad for the parents of the 3-year-old they're going to bury because of rattlesnake? Yeah, I hate it for
Right. In instances like that, I might not necessarily feel the pain of that particular person, but when it's like you describing to me the struggle that you're having, um, yeah, I can. It's I don't know. It's I don't know how to describe it except that that I experience what I imagine the same emotion that you were having at the time. Um, so, and I was gonna go there because my brain does this to me.
We're old, dude.
Um,
It's just okay. Just don't let it drive you over the
right,
proverbial edge.
right. Um,
It's okay because this is the reality that we're trying to emote to these people anyway. This is what we deal with. So if we're
yeah,
talking about our lives and our problems, this is one of them. This is the
right,
forgetfulness.
right.
And
So, if somebody was experiencing some of the same emotions you've experienced, what advice would you give them if they came to you and said, "Hey, man, life is terrible, and I feel like my family's be better off."
you can't really pigeonhole the type of advice you would give. But there is one thing that I have carried through with me throughout most of my life that I would like to say I have modified to fit this. As a mechanic, as a person, every time I've ever been into, I've done auto mechanics and handicap equipment and home repairs and one of my mottos is I'm a human, it's a machine, I'm going to win.
Okay.
All right. And I've done that through my whole life. People say, well, I can't be fixed. Well, you just haven't let me look at it yet.
Right.
All right? It
I
can
think
be fixed. If somebody made it, I can fix it.
we think alike that way. I agree. Yeah.
And that's proved to be well. Well, the same thing kind of applies to life. Your attitude should be that stuff attacking me. All right. I
Right.
am me. That is nothing. I will win. All right. Because I
Yeah.
don't have to be driven down by that. I choose to let those things come in and change how I see things. All right. If I go, you know what? That's a machine. Let's just pretend that's a machine out there firing stuff at us.
Yeah.
When you're a machine, I'm a human, I'm going to win.
Right.
All right. So you kind of have to have that mentality. You have to
Okay.
understand that you are in complete and total control of yourself. And if you want to win, you'll win, which means you'll do what you have to win. Now, before some smart aleck gets in there and says, well, both sides of a war want to win and one of them has to lose, that's not what I'm talking about.
Nobody wins in a war, hardly.
No, there is
Yeah.
no winner or loser. I mean, it was a complete and total waste of everything.
Yeah.
I'm talking about personal interaction, your response to outside criteria. Are you going to let it beat you, or are you going to understand that you don't have to take it at all?
So, did you feel then that in order for you to win in this most recent episode, did you feel like that in order to win, that taking your life might be that?
No, it would have been a loss completely. That wasn't even part of my motivation. I wasn't part of the equation. What
Right.
I'd made myself was I was in between my family and this money. I was an obstacle.
Well, okay, but maybe winning in the sense of winning for your family's sake. No,
What about win or loss, dude? It was
that
just
was
about
just
paying off
about
a mortgage.
providing.
Yeah,
Well,
keeping
yeah.
a
Well, I
roof over their
mean,
head.
but if paying off the mortgage is the goal, and you don't see any other way
No,
to win it.
it still wasn't a win. It's just a more acceptable loss in my
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
Because if I take my life, under no circumstances is that ever going to be a win for anything, anywhere, period.
Right. And you're able to kind of work through that logically somehow. And then so what took you from there to where you are now? How did
I
you get
got
from there
lucky
to
on
here?
this one because I didn't have to. It was the outside world saved me.
Okay.
And as much as I hated it, I was to the point where I was failing at my job and physically breaking down and significant memory issues and a lot of stuff. And when I got almost to the end, I got a job offer from somebody who's been trying to hire me for years. The same guy that fired me in 2008.
Okay.
All right. And he's been trying to hire me back because he can't find anybody that can do what I can do. And you could go into hours of that stuff. It doesn't really matter. All I'm saying is that I fit what he wants to do.
Sure.
And I wanted to go to him even before he offered, the first time. I would like the thought of being back working with them. But this last time around, as I'm struggling to make it through the day because I can barely pick up what I got to pick up, I can crawl around under a house and come out feeling like I've already passed away. And he
Right.
made me this job offer, and we got to talk, and I realized basically it addressed all of my concerns, all of the needs that I had. It's more money, less hours, stability, a more suitable work environment for me, something I can handle without beating me down.
Yeah.
So everything was positive. Everything was
Yeah.
a good move. And I spent the whole day yesterday sad because I did not want to leave Philip, the guy I was
Sure.
working for. I had hopes and dreams of him and me building something together. I just couldn't do it. But what I found funny was as soon as that was lifted off of me, a lot of my other issues went with it. So I realized it was like the memory. Even my memory for
Sure.
stuff has gotten better over the last few days just from the relief of the strain. The education about that is that it's the strain that was causing the problem. My fear of losing my abilities was causing me to lose my abilities. It was backwards.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you can see that before you make a stupid decision, then you can do something with it. At
Right.
this point, I was so overwhelmed that I quit looking. I think that was my problem. Is I quit looking, and I think God intervened because He knew
Yeah.
I was not going. I wasn't going my own book. I wasn't going by my own rules. I'd lost
Right.
my way somewhere.
Yeah.
So most
Well,
people may not have that advantage in this situation. I got lucky.
right. I'm glad you did. You call it luck or providence or whatever. And there are, everybody has struggles of one kind or another. Um, in dealing with pain, with emotional pain, you, am I wrong? Am I right or am I wrong? So you, with depression, you see that as okay, and it's a chemical thing, and so you can kind of divorce your actions from the input from the depression. Um, so although I haven't been suicidal lately or had any thoughts of taking my life, in dealing with the PTSD, and there's a lot of anxiety, and that can lead to depression and all kinds of other problems for some people. And there might be somebody out there dealing with that particular issue. Um, to me, there was a moment. I think even before I knew that I had PTSD, but I can remember having this moment where I decided that no matter what happened, that I was going to just fight and just continue. And if I lost this fight and got beaten down every day of my life until the day I died, I was not going to go out of this world without the struggle and try to continue in that.
We were going to make the world take you out. You weren't going to let it go. You weren't going to go yourself.
Right. And
If you
if
win, it's because you got taken out, not because you gave up.
Yep. And if nothing improved for me, if it didn't improve at all, or if it only improved a millimeter, yeah, I would fight the rest of my life for the improvement. And that moment for me made a huge difference because it was that determination that got me through that, and then to the next good thing, and then to the next good thing. And I'm not going to say life is easy for me.
It's
It's
not easy for
not.
any of us, for us.
No, it's not. And for the first time, I'm starting to feel some of the issues I think that you have dealt with. You're talking about your body breaking down with physical labor. The other day at work, I almost passed out. The older I get, the less I can deal with heat. And I'm up on this galvanized roof, and for the first time, I realized I cannot do physical labor like this forever. I do something different. So,
Well, you can forever. You're going to keep doing it until you have a heart attack and die. That's it.
well, I can't do it at the
So
same level. Right, but I can't
that's
do
the
this.
problem. We don't want to push it to that point.
Right. Yeah. Well, I can't. I can't. I can't do it the same degree that I used to be able to. I can't work as
Yeah.
hard, as fast, as long. It used to be the heat. Yeah, I'd sweat and throw down some water, just keep on going. And but things are going to be okay. You got. I've had to realize that I'm going to have to adjust and make some changes in some things, you know. So that's for another day, another show.
Yeah. You know, when I came over here to sit down and talk about this, I really didn't have any idea where we were going to go or what we were going to do, but I don't know. Well, first thing, I probably should have said this in the beginning to give people an idea of where I'm at. Um, there's no such thing as suicide prevention. It doesn't exist.
True.
It's an oxymoron. It cannot. It's an unattainable goal. If somebody decides that they're going to go, you're not going to stop them.
Right.
You can put them in a nut ward for 72 hours. They're going to get out, do what they have to get out. Then they're going to go finish what they got to do if they can't do it in there.
Right.
It's about the decision. So you cannot prevent suicide. I listen to people all the time. In fact, I've said it to someone before. Somebody commits suicide, and the first thing I can't believe they did it. I'm sorry, what?
Right.
Did you not have your eyes open?
Yeah.
Were you just totally? And we as humans, I think we ignore those things because we know how easy it would be for us to be in the same situation. All right. You don't want to talk about suicide because you know you may end up there in that one day. So you don't want to talk about it because you're afraid. So why are we having the problem? Because people are afraid to talk about the things that need to be talked about. And then they wonder why people did it. Duh.
And there's a stigma with suicide. People see it as a weakness.
Yes. For me, if I did it, it would have been like me self-martyring. I had no desire to die. I didn't want to leave. I've got a wonderful family. I love my wife. I've only had 6 with you. I've been alone my whole life. I finally got married, found the right woman.
Right.
I've only had 6 years with her. You think I want to go now? No, I don't want to go now. I want to live to be 150.
Right.
But what was driving me had nothing to do with the time. It wasn't about me.
Right. Right. So some people who are potentially suicidal, who are in a lot of pain, they will oftentimes reach out before they do it. Now, you say that's not suicide prevention, and I agree. That's the services we provide for people who are in those, that you're not preventing their suicide,
No.
you're providing them with relief from the pain.
So that they can prevent their own suicide.
Because they really didn't want to commit suicide.
Yeah.
Because if they had decided they wanted to, there's no reaching out, there's no threat, there's none of this, none of the signs that we talk about typically or think about people who are, quote, suicidal. Those aren't really symptoms of suicide. Those are symptoms of pain. That's how I see it. And so I don't know. What should we call that?
It needs to be more about suicide awareness or recognition.
Yeah.
I can tell you that there's been a time in my past, and see, I pay attention to stuff. I can't help it. And maybe it's harder for other people. I don't know, but I pay attention. And one day, one of my friends came in, and he was just different. He wasn't sad or upset, but he was different.
Right.
And about halfway through the day, I said, "Hey, man," I said, "What's wrong? What happened?" He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Something's different." He said, "No, I'm fine." I said, "No, you're not."
Right.
I said, "Something's different."
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, you know," and he let some stuff out, and he said, "I wasn't feeling good," and all this happened, and it didn't go much further than that. But he told me a few years later that he was going home to kill himself. He said he had enough.
Yeah.
He said he didn't feel like anybody gave a shit. Excuse my French, but
right.
That's his quote. Nobody cared about me.
Yeah.
He said, and then you noticed virtually nothing about me and you knew something was wrong. He said, that's when I knew I wasn't alone.
Right.
And I said, so I prevented your suicide. And he said, kinda. And he said, and that's as close as I could get to suicide prevention, and it's accidental.
Sure.
But that's not what I didn't think he was suicidal. I had no right reason. I just knew something was different.
Right. People who are truly suicidal often will. I mean, they don't reach out. I mean, what are they going to do? They're going to put their affairs in order. They might make sure that the house is clean and the yard's neatly cut. You can tell I'm not suicidal. My yard needs to be cut. Everything kind of in a row. They might even make plans for their own funeral arrangements and that kind of thing. They're going to want things to be neat and orderly often. Of course, you can't paint one picture and say this is what it looks like. Everybody's different.
The single biggest missing part is our inability or our refusal or our lack of interest in paying attention to the small things in our friends' lives. All right.
Right.
If your wife's, if your friend's husband is seen at a bar one night, oh my God, you're going to remember that. You're going to notice that after, oh my God, he was at a bar, blah, blah. But he comes into work every day with a smile, and then he comes in one day and he doesn't talk to anybody. He just goes in and does his job.
Yeah.
Nobody notices it.
Right.
He's the same for 20 years, and then one day he comes, well, I just having a bad day. Maybe he is. Ask him.
Right.
Ask him. Say, hey, man, you're different. What's wrong? And I've had that happen numerous times. I had a girl one time. She used to work at the same place I did. She come in one morning. She just walked in the door, and I looked at her. I said, "What happened?" She went, "What?" She said, "What happened?" I said, "What happened?" She said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Something's happened." She said, "What makes you say that?" I said, "I don't know. Either something's wrong with your kids or your boyfriend dumped you." Oh my God, how can you tell? I said, "I don't know." She said, "Well, my boyfriend dumped me." I went, "Okay, are you all right?" She said, "Yeah." And all I did, I just could tell. I noticed there was something about her
Right.
different.
Yep.
We really like to pay attention to people when we're looking for something to get them for. All right?
Right.
We
Right.
we critique them down to the tiniest speck on their fingernail.
Right.
But when it comes to keeping them alive, we ain't critiquing them.
Why do we critique people that way, do you think?
It makes us, I don't know. There's a couple of different, there's a lot of people in this world that elevate themselves on the bodies of the people that they've put down below them.
Yep. That's exactly what I was thinking.
All right. And I don't do it that way. What elevates me is when I have picked someone up and pushed them further up the ladder than I am.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
It's concept. You choose the concept. But if you're looking to make yourself feel better about your life, the easiest way is by comparing yourself to someone else and making them look bad. It's easy. All right.
Right.
Bad is inherently easy. Good takes work.
Right.
And I think that's what we do.
I think you're right. No.
If you took that,
Mhm.
if you took that desire, that critiquing ability down to the fingernail and applied it to the other side,
Okay.
all right, probably a vast number of suicides would never occur. What do you think when the guy's sitting there going, "I'm worthless, I'm no good, I need to just go," and then you hear somebody talking about some stupid little thing that he did, and he don't love his wife because he did this? What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah.
Really?
Right.
And we do it all the time.
Yeah. And today, with some people commit suicide, and some people decide to take that frustration or that sense of worthlessness, that feeling, and they take it out on other people. They make themselves feel powerful in the end by.
The most powerful person on the ladder is the guy at the bottom.
He's holding it up.
And he's helping people
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Right.
The guy that goes back into the fire. He's the hero.
Yeah.
Not the guy sitting out there trying to, the guy putting it out, yes, but the guy that climbs the ladder and walks into the flames to pull people out. The guy that's at the bottom. I was thinking the other day, too, about something funny that I heard that plays the same way. Never teach someone to do your job or they'll replace you. I am opposite of that.
Exactly.
My goal is to bring you up to my level at least. And then if I can't keep my job based on my own abilities, just because this guy can do it too, I don't need to be there. Maybe they need him instead.
Right.
It's a mentality. It's a concept. You have to look at things the way you don't want to look at them. When you look at something and say, I don't want to deal with this, that's the first flag.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that says, hey, man, you need to be paying attention. Something's going on here. Get into it.
Yeah.
But we don't. We go, I don't want to deal with this. And I'm guilty of a lot of things of doing that too. Of course, I've been so overwhelmed, I'm hoping something's going to go away. But no, if many of these people that are dealing with the problems in their lives have problems because all of the other people around them don't care enough to ask them or do anything about it or deal with it. So if Billy Bob kills himself down the road here, whose fault? Is it his fault? Probably not. It's his responsibility. He did it.
Right.
Is it his fault? In a predominantly Christian country, it should never occur like that.
Right.
You know, you shouldn't be busting him down because he's drinking. Why do you think he's drinking? Because the man's thinking about killing himself.
Right.
Ask him, hey, why did you start drinking? What's up?
Exactly.
But no, they're going to sit around and go, you see Billy Bob's drinking all the time.
Yeah. I'm talking about behind his back. And, yeah.
And then I never saw it coming. That's because you're blind. And I'm going to go ahead and throw in there, because if you've had this experience out there, you're stupid. I hate to use the word stupid.
Right.
But I think stupid is a choice we make. We choose to be stupid. It's not natural.
Okay.
When you have an opportunity to do something to help someone and you don't do it, it's stupidity. That's how I see it.
Sure. Yeah, that's one way to describe it.
Get it.
Yep. Stupidity, selfish, apathetic, it's all part of stupidity. And I for one, don't understand. Maybe it's just the way that my brain is wired. I do not understand when you have an opportunity to help a person, not helping them. I've never understood not helping somebody who needs help, and I can help them. And if I can't help them, then I want to help them find the person who can help them.
Depends on your motivation. I'll give you an example. You see a guy standing on a corner.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You got two different kind of people that are gonna interact with that guy or not interact. First guy's gonna say, well, I'm not gonna help him, just gonna spend it on alcohol. The second guy says, I'm gonna give him money. I don't care what he does with it, because it's not about what he does, it's about what I do.
Right.
All right. The value in the gift is in the giving, not in the receiving.
Sure.
All right. Yep. So do I think he's going to use it for alcohol? No, I don't think at all. He's standing there, looks rough, asking for money. Do I have some money? Sure. Here you go. I don't care.
And if he takes your money and he actually goes and gets this nice pickup truck and drives home because he has his nice house, that's
not do it again. I might not give it to him again.
Well, if you know, but that's on him.
But that's a judgment call. And it won't be because I have a problem with what he's doing. It'll be because there's other people who don't have that truck and don't have that house, and they need it more.
Right. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that if you know they're going to do that, that's one thing.
Yes.
But I think some people assume, well, that guy's either too lazy to work or he's just out here panhandling, and they've actually got nice things. They're just, but you don't know that most of the time. And if you don't know that, you shouldn't make assumptions about somebody.
If needing to know that is your criteria, you don't need to be helping anyway, because you're not helping.
Right.
It's not the point.
That's right. That's absolutely right. That's not the point.
Now, even if I know he's going to get alcohol, should that stop me from giving it to him?
Well, I don't know, because okay, if someone is if they're a hardcore addict, they need the alcohol. They'll die without it if I don't give him and help him. So am I perpetuating a problem, or am I actually helping him in the moment? Is there a problem? Yeah. Can I maybe keep him alive long enough so that he can get the help that he needs?
More importantly, what's more important?
Yeah.
My belief of what he's going to do with the money, or his right to do with the money whatever he wants to do. If I want you to give me my right to do it, I got to respect yours. But go ahead.
But that's your money. You don't have to give it to him.
No. But you're never going to know what he's going to do with it. So why even contemplate it?
Yeah. So how do you feel about, instead of, let's say someone, what do you feel about giving them food or buying them food?
I've done that many times.
I've
done that many times. I had one guy tell me, I've had a few of them turn me down when I offered to buy them something instead of giving them money. Their choice. I said, okay, no problem. I had one guy say, look, he said, I'm not going to lie to you. He said, I'm an alcoholic. He said, I'm going nuts here. He said, I just want a beer.
Yeah.
And I gave him like $20.
Right.
He said, dude, that beer's like $2. I said, take 20. And he said, why? I said, I understand you're struggling, and I understand there's no other option at the moment. What I really understand is you're an honest man. I said, I'm giving you money because you're honest.
Yeah.
I said, my friends will beat me down. I said, you gave money to buy a beer. You're an adult. Do what you want to do. Okay.
Yeah.
You're responsible for the outcome of it, but do whatever you want to do. Right. But I gave him the money because he was honest. And he told me, he said, I'm struggling. I just need a beer to take the edge off.
Yeah.
I said, okay, here's the money. You know what his buddy told me he did with it?
What's that?
He bought a beer, and then he bought two of his friends food.
How about that?
Am I going to say I don't want to feed those two guys because I don't want him drinking a beer?
Right.
No.
Right.
No.
I agree. I know somebody who keeps some. They don't have a lot of money, but what they do, because there are a number of homeless people out about. They get big gallon-sized Ziploc bags, and they'll put a bottle of water and a couple of granola bars and some dried fruit and pack of peanuts and whatnot in there. And anytime they see somebody, because they can get that cheap, that doesn't cost much, and so they'll give that to them. But
segued into a different subject there, didn't we?
we did. But yeah, but
But how do you know
but these things connect a little bit.
How do you know that beer didn't keep him from dying? It didn't
Right.
keep him from killing himself. You don't.
Right. You don't. Okay, but these two things I think are related somewhat, and here's how they're related, at least in one way. About 75%, and I don't ask me where the statistic comes from, but I know I've seen it, and I have seen. Anyway, if I can find the video, I'll link it in the description. It's actually a commercial of all things, but that's beside the point. About 75% of all single homeless people are men. And I think it's about 80% of all suicides are men. And so my question is, why is that? And I don't know the answer. I don't know that you know the answer, but why do you think that is?
Because we accept the stereotype that has been imposed on us about what a man's supposed to be, about what a man's supposed to do, and about what a man's supposed to be responsible for. And we're still accepting that stereotype. 200 years ago, the man had to be the provider. The woman couldn't. She had to be at home taking care of kids.
Right.
Nowadays, that's not the case. All right, and because of now and the risk of pissing somebody higher up, because of the way our government works, pretty much both people have to work anyway. But men are still hardwired to believe that we are responsible for the success or failure of our own families, not us, our whole family, and the people around us. And we're not. We're not. Because unlike the old days, these people are not pigeonholed into any particular thing. They're not locked into any particular criteria of how their life's going to go. They can be responsible for themselves even at a young age.
Right.
They can take care of themselves.
Right.
They make bad decisions. We feel like we failed.
Sure.
Sometimes maybe that's true. I don't know. But, if you fail to educate, or you fail to educate properly, or you overeducate, or you abuse, there's a lot of people that can drive people to that. But I'm talking in the normal family unit or the normal life, devoid of unusual or wrong criteria, we still feel like we're responsible for every failure around us. So not only are we dealing with our own failures, we're dealing with our family's failures or our friends. I could have done this. I could have done. I could have is one of the stupidest things you can think.
Right.
Because you could have done this. You couldn't have done this. It doesn't matter. All right. Why are we continually ranking ourselves based on our past instead of trying to rank ourselves based on what we can do in the future?
Right. And everybody can improve no matter where you're at right now.
Start over You can start over every minute. Start over any time.
I don't think I've told you this yet. I'll tell you when we're done. Maybe I did tell you, but we'll talk about it when we're done. But I'm basically going to be starting over here in some ways pretty soon. I think we did talk about it, but
a little bit.
But that's okay. I mean, and the more I think about it, I'm like, there is that part of my life where I'm going to be starting over somewhat, but at the same time, I have things here that I want to do that I don't want to give up, that I want to continue with, that I think might also provide the fulfillment that I'm looking for. Yeah,
Fulfillment's a good word we haven't used yet.
Yeah, a lot of people don't feel fulfilled, and some of those pressures are from within, and some of those pressures are from society, where we expect a certain thing out of men, like you're talking about. And so when men struggle, we see it as a failure in the man, not for perhaps the medical condition that it is, for the chemical condition that it is, for the problems created by maybe society or some other thing. And I, I think that men in general get neglected more so than the gentler sex,
Or children.
as we can piss off the feminists out there.
Oops.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
So yeah, and so I do think that those two things somewhat are related. But a lot of men, they feel unfulfilled. They feel like they're a failure, that they're worthless. There's no sense in living. And then some men, I think, they just give up. They're like, you know what? Why should I just keep on trying? But instead of killing themselves, I'll just go out here and just live on the street. I'll just sit,
If I
I'll
make
do
it, I make it. If
whatever.
I don't, I don't.
Yeah, I'll get out here and there's a homeless shelter and I can go get free food and I don't have to have any worries.
You mentioned the word feminist and the feminist movement, and the original feminist movement. I agreed with. I think a woman should get credit for anything she can do. Period.
Yeah.
She should be paid the same, treated the same. If she can do a better job than me, she should get paid more than me. I don't have a problem in the world with that. But men are still, we're still held to a higher accountability. If a woman tries to do a job, is that still recording?
Well, I don't know if that is or not, but this is.
Okay, you're getting it. All right.
Yeah.
But men are still we're still holding ourselves to a higher level of accountability.
Yeah.
If a woman goes through boot camp and doesn't make it, well, she was a woman. If a man goes through boot camp, doesn't make it, he's no good.
Right.
He failed.
Yeah.
For a woman, well, it was expected. For a man,
right.
Well, why do we have anything different? What is it? And that is more of the same stress that we have.
Yeah.
That makes men go to that point. It's just too much.
Yep. So some of my final thoughts are, especially talking to you about your most recent experience where, finally the break came. So I agree with you that telling people that it could always be worse has no benefit at all. But
quite the opposite.
But what about telling people that it will get better? Because I think one of the problems people have is that they have no hope.
It can get better.
It can get better.
Because if you say it will get better, all I'm thinking is you don't have any idea. You don't know. But if you say it can get better, I can't argue that.
It's true.
So think about how the mind that's fixing to end itself is going to see that. How dare you tell me it will get better? How do you know? I've been thinking it'll get better for years and it don't. So you got to be careful. And again, I'm speaking from the gun in the mouth situation.
Sure.
If you called me and said, "Hey man, things will get better," I go, "You know what the hell you're talking about." But if you said, "Hey man, things can get better," I'd have to go, "Well, I can't say they can't."
Right.
So see, that's the whole point of how you deal with someone who's already over the edge. You don't come at them like you know the answers, because I'm going to tell you right now, you don't know nothing.
And you may not know how it's going to get better, how it can get better.
But you do know the potentials.
Sure.
Okay. You can represent the potentials. You just can't represent the absolutes because you don't know them. So it's not things will get better. It's things can get better.
And do you think that it's helpful maybe for people to know that, hey, somebody else has been in a similar situation and for them, it did get better? And that's how you know.
Maybe. It depends on the person.
But that's how you know that it can get better for somebody else, because it did get better for you. Things did get better for me.
But I think as human beings, it's not a question. We already know it can get better. We're beyond caring about it getting better is the point.
Sometimes.
See, that's just it.
You didn't care. Yeah, you don't.
I already knew that things could get better. I just was tired of fighting it. I'm just tired.
Yeah.
How do you combat tired? You can't tell someone, well, if you go to sleep, you won't be so tired, because it's not that kind of tired.
So what about
the whole point of this? Okay. Is not about us trying to figure out what to do. Okay, that's not the point of this.
Right.
And one of the biggest points of this is more about what not to do. Speaking from the point of the gun in the mouth, there are certain things that would have only been triggers Most of them have to do with someone trying to tell somebody else something.
Okay.
When we're sitting there at the end of our rope, we don't want you telling us. We already know we're not stupid, okay?
Right.
But when you phrase it the right way, you've now put the person's mind in a position that they have to rethink it. Because if you say, hey, things can get better, I got to tell myself before I pull the trigger, is he right?
Right.
Can things get better, or do I know they're not going to get better? So now you've changed the whole mental process in that person.
Right. Okay. So you don't know that it's not going to get better.
No, really, in all honesty, you don't know. You don't know that it will, but you don't know that it won't. You don't know.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact you don't know. So don't tell me it's going to get better. You don't know.
Yeah.
And that's just another one of the things, the reason we're sitting there sucking on a gun barrel already. So that's what you got to be careful of, is how you interact, because they're over the edge. Okay. You're not trying to keep them from going. They're already over. You're trying to pull them back.
You're trying to pull them back.
Yeah.
So hey man, it can get better. Let's figure this out together.
That's a much better way. If you just said that to me on the phone, if I called you and you said, hey man, things could be worse.
Right.
You say, hey man, things will get better. But if you just said, hey man, I believe things can get better. Can I help you?
Yeah, let's work on it.
Now I'm sitting there going, well, the guy's right. Things can get better. What am I going to do now?
Because that does give somebody hope, or it could give them hope.
That's what you're trying to do.
And that's what people want.
Yes.
I think no matter the situation, whether whether it's a logical decision, or whether it's an emotional decision, or someone's just simply in pain, they think that this is my way out because they have no hope.
And what you've done with that statement is you let them know, because they're not alone. Okay, if they thought they were alone, you're sitting here going, hey man, what can I do to help? And two, you're reaffirming that it's not the end of the road. Yeah. Not because you told them it's not the end of the road, but because you made them reassess.
Yeah.
And most people already know. So when you go, hey man, I think things can get better, they got no choice. They got to say, well, is he correct? Can they get better?
Yeah.
So you've changed the whole mental process that put him in that position.
Okay.
So either you're going to go to the edge and push because you think you know,
right?
Or you're going to go back and you're going to reach out a hand and pull because you know you don't know.
Right.
That's the difference.
Okay.
And don't be thinking, people get all bowed up thinking, well, I know this is stupid and they need to listen to me. No. I told you, they're already over the edge.
Yeah.
Right?
They're there.
Your logic is not going to work. You might be 100% correct.
Yeah.
That's not what they need.
That makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Think about it it's a process. Think about it like a boat with a hole in it. You hand them a bucket and they can dip the water out and they make it to shore.
Sure.
All right. You've just got them to shore. That's all you did. You just brought them back.
All right.
You're going to let them go back out in the boat with the hole in it, hand them the bucket and say, go ahead, go out and play some more? No. Now you've got them back on the land. Now you got to try to find out what to do with the hole. It's two totally different things.
Right.
You saved them from a sinking boat. Now you got to tell them why they shouldn't get back in the boat without fixing the hole.
Right.
All they saw was the water gushing out. But if you let it go and let them go again, they're going to be in the same boat with the same hole.
Right. You got to fix the hole.
You got to help them fix the hole.
Right.
Show them that the hole can be fixed, right? But show them the hole can be fixed.
Yeah.
And then help them fix it.
So,
you might even have to help them. Just the fact that you said, hey, man, can I help you, might be enough for them to fix the hole themselves.
Might be. Yeah. Hopefully this helps somebody. I hope so. Do you have any final thoughts or parting thoughts?
There's one thing I want to share in general.
Okay.
I told you I beat depression.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to tell you what I did.
Okay. Okay, good.
The story is I was in my backyard throwing a lawnmower around because it had made me angry.
Okay.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't crank. All right?
Right.
And I'm picking it up and heaving it and kicking it and all this. And I look up and there's somebody looking at me out of a window. All right. And as soon as I saw them looking at me like, what is this? I thought to myself, I'm going to ask them. I got to think about this. And I said, no, I don't have to ask them. I know what they're looking at. They're looking at some crazy lunatic out in his backyard fighting a lawnmower. All right.
Right.
No win situation. Even if I win, I've lost,
Yeah.
And I ended up asking them, I told them later, I said, what you saw there, I said, I tried to see it through your eyes, and what I saw was a lunatic in the backyard. And I thought, wow, if I was married or I was dating someone and we were talking about having kids, when I want the woman that I was with to want to have kids when she saw that, I said, would she be able to trust me? And the woman said, well, you've never hurt anybody before, right? I said, no. I said, but how do you know I won't? I said, that is not the kind of process you see in a man that you can assume he's never going to hurt anybody.
Right.
Bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
No matter how you look at it. I'm having a fight with a piece of metal. There's something wrong.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I decided that day I needed a break.
Mm-hmm.
Went to a doctor. I got on an antidepressant. All I did it for was to bring me down to a point I could start identifying the issues. Went on about a year and a half. Talked to my doctor. Said, okay, I want to start weaning myself off. I want to start learning, figuring out what's causing this. And this is going to sound stupid, but it works for me. And I think anybody can do what they really want to do. As I started weaning myself off, I started having these things start to reoccur, the things that were triggering the anger.
Okay.
And I ended up identifying, I separated my brain from my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this is coming from my brain. This is not my thoughts. This is coming from my brain. So I said, it's chemicals. And I made a commitment. I said, every time this happens, I'm going to laugh. Like the count to 10 thing.
Sure.
On steroids.
Yeah.
And this little thing, and I got to the point where I could feel it. I just feel it back here, and I go, and my laughs were, because I didn't want to.
Right.
Okay, but I made the commitment, and I said, I'm going to keep doing it. And then it started getting, and then it got, and then it got, I could feel it start, and I'd go, no, and it would quit.
Right. Okay.
All right, so I beat whatever was going on in there. Does it still happen? Sure, but I refuse to respond, and I think it's the initial response that determines how much power that's going to have.
Okay. Yes. I want to mention something else. When you talk about the laughter, so there is this this thought, and I think that some studies have shown it to be somewhat verified, but that our physical actions, the things that we decide to do in spite of how we feel, can then affect our emotion.
Yeah.
So if we force ourselves to laugh in a situation where we might not normally laugh, then there's this thing in our brain that goes, wait a minute, why am I laughing? And then your brain can start to actually find the humor in it. And then the laughter becomes genuine. And then the whole mindset can change.
Yes. It's called, that's part of the neuroplasticity stuff where you're retrain your brain how to respond and think.
Right.
And, I turned that into that lawnmower flying around the yard. It changed from a lunatic throwing a lawnmower around and being scared to look at this clown. And it became funny.
Right.
Okay? But you never forget that what you find funny, others are not going to find funny. So you still modify your actions. But for you, now it's just when you think about, hey, I'm going to beat this lawnmower up, you go, wait a minute. I've already determined that's just going to look funny. So you just go ahead and laugh.
Yep.
And, and I think, and I'm not a doctor, but I think when you do that, I think it prevents the other chemicals that would have been released in your fight or flight concept thing. When you laugh, instead of it shooting the adrenaline and all those other ones that it shoots in there, it just goes, well, hold on a minute. I don't need adrenaline for laughter. I needed it for anger, and there's no anger, so we're not going to let that go. So you're kind of turning your fight into flight, which is good. Just step away from it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to fight anymore. So and it's to the point now. Do I get angry? Sure. Do I go over the edge? No, because my brain already says, well, he's just going to laugh at me anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So again, identify the enemy, give it an existence, make it exist, make it something real.
Okay.
Learn what it's doing, and then counteract it. And before long, what it becomes is a habit instead of a thought. Like driving a car. When you're a kid, you think about everything you're doing. Oh my God, I got to hit the brake, I got to hit the gas. Now you're driving down the road, you're not even thinking. Because the other part of your brain has taken over because now it's a habit.
Right.
Change your habits of how your brain's going to respond.
Okay.
You can do that with anything. I truly believe it. I truly believe we have the ability to do whatever we commit to.
I agree.
I'm not saying, you can't become Superman, but I'm talking
we
about
can't. Right.
within reason.
Right.
But I wanted to share that story because if there's anybody out there who's dealing with all of the crap, all of the static in your head,
Yeah.
Right. That's what I had, was just all the time.
Sure.
Couldn't sleep at night. It wouldn't show. I ended up taking the break. I know there's a lot of people out there that don't believe in medications. I don't believe in them either as a cure. I believe in them as a break.
Right. And they can be a tool to
Yes.
give you the break until you can
You
figure out how to
need
deal with
to
it.
reassess. Take the meds. If you want to talk to someone, go see a psychologist.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to a psychiatrist if you don't want to be medicated, but at least go see a psychologist.
Sure.
Take that break.
Yeah.
And then pay attention to what's happening when you take yourself off of that.
Yep.
Identify the issue. Identify what it takes to
Yes.
cancel it out, and then
Right.
commit to doing that every time. It's going to be hard.
Yep.
But it's going to be worth it.
And every psychologist isn't going to, let me rephrase that. If you go to a psychologist and you feel like you're not getting the help you need, find a different psychologist.
Yeah.
I've been to a psychologist once, a bunch of times. And I should say a bunch of times, but no, but I did go see one when I needed some help. That's a whole other story. But that psychologist didn't have the experience, and we just didn't mesh. And I ended up getting a reference for another, and that guy was what I needed. Yeah.
My
Completely.
psychologist, the one I went to, the woman that one of my best friend's daughters runs it,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "I know you. I know your guy." She said, "You're not going to have to jump around. I know the guy you need to see." And she was
Good.
right. But
Yeah.
if it hadn't happened, I would have had to try another one until I found the right one that clicks. It's okay that it don't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's different.
And that's the difference between my first experience and the second one. Was I went to somebody who knew me, who was a psychologist, who made the reference. That person couldn't see me, but they went, "Here's the one you need."
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
you're looking for. So
Yep.
sometimes the solution is what people think is passing the buck. It's not passing the buck.
No.
It's a true friend will send you to who they think you need to be.
If your air conditioner in your home went out and you couldn't figure it out, it's not passing the buck to have somebody help you figure
Right.
out who knows what they're doing.
And it's not if your
Yeah.
guy comes in and he's a great AC guy, but he
Mhm.
breaks it open. He says, "You know what? I don't know this system as well as John down the
Yeah.
street does. You're better served if you go with John."
Exactly.
You're going to go with John. Does that mean you're going to go with him forever? No.
Right.
You'll
Right.
go back to your original guy because he was willing to
Yep.
show you. So it's all
Yeah. It's like with attorneys. You're not,
yeah.
if
Go with your
I'm getting a
strengths.
divorce, I'm not going to hire a real estate attorney. Yep.
So yeah, go with your strengths. That's what you do. But you got to identify your strengths and their strengths.
Absolutely.
So.
Thank you.
Man,
Man,
I can tell you right now before we close this out, there's a whole lot more that could be talked about on this.
well, I was going to say we're not done talking about this.
No,
because,
and- And again, I'm going to encourage anybody who does watch this, if you know anybody that would benefit from this, or you think might benefit from this, or you might think would find it funny and entertaining, suggest that they watch it. Suggest that they comment. If they got a comment, if they got a question, comment. We'll go into it.
yeah.
If you want to share something with us, send us the contact information or something, and we'll talk to them. See if they want to share something and talk about it, or give us any ideas of things that need to be done. This doesn't work if people don't interact.
Right.
So,
Yep.
if you got anything, put it out there.
Please. Very good. Awesome. Thanks, man. We'll see y'all next time.